Hey, I'm Jessica Malta, and today on the Every Arkansan podcast, I have my close friend and boss, Drew Davis. I can't wait for you to hear about how he trusted God in the very beginning. So today I have my boss in the hot seat, Drew Davis, and I'm so excited to get to interview you. I'm kind of nervous. My hands are clammy. I don't know why.
I'm just
in
that
charge.
intimidating.
No, I'm in charge finally for once. I get
For
to ask.
once? Oh.
I get to ask you all the hard questions, and I know you have a background. You haven't always just worked in the nonprofit world. You came from finance, and why? And all of this, some people would think, why would you leave such a good job, good paying job, and go into something of so many unknowns?
My wife asked the same question when I came home and told her I'd quit my job that was paying a lot of money and hadn't briefed her on it. Mm-hmm. Not good advice for any man out there to quit without talking to his wife first. But I was really struggling. We were just about to have our first daughter, and I always felt I needed to offer the kingdom more. Mm-hmm. But my skill set, I'm good with numbers. No one ever needed me. Mm-hmm. The church world didn't need me. The ministry world didn't need me. I just always felt like, oh, you've got these things. Just give. That's all you have to offer. And it really started me down that path of thinking of, okay, I can do more. I'd done business turnarounds. I'd been part of a lot of different things because I grew up with a father that exposed me to craziness in the business world. And all of those things, God was laying out in order for what he had for me next. And I quit that. And a few months later, an opportunity came to move to Colorado with my family and newborn baby of a month old.
Cannot believe y'all did that.
Yeah, my wife can't
6
either.
months, and there's no way I'm moving.
and we moved out to Colorado in the middle of nowhere to take over this camp that was being shut down.
Yeah.
And there was no money to pay me. We had a roof over our heads, but there was no stability there.
Yeah.
But it was perhaps the most freedom I've ever experienced in my life because it's like I'm chasing after something that matters to God, not that just matters to me.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
And I'm not just here to write out a check. I'm here to actually use all these crazy experiences to forward the kingdom.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of my first foray into that. And then I did that, fixed that, turned it around, and moved back to Arkansas. And Pastor Rick and Pastor Darren said, hey, Drew, could you help us at the church? We're growing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my goodness, the church just said they want me. and that was just.
But they put you back on a roll with numbers, right?
Yeah, I was back with numbers, of course. I mean, you can't get away from that. Dad said, if you get the accounting degree, you'll always have a job.
Hey,
and so
that's good advice for someone out there.
Exactly. But so I did that, and it was just this craziness of, oh my goodness, I'm getting to use what God's kind of given me with. And all those entrepreneurial things that I'd done just were there still. They weren't pushed down so that I could be in ministry. They were allowed to continue to grow, and that's what led me to seeing what Pastor Matthew Barnett was doing in LA and really just saying, I want to do that.
So tell me about that. So you take a trip to LA, you see the Dream Center there, and then what happened?
Yeah, and it was really, I didn't even take the trip there first.
Okay.
Pastor Matthew was doing a book tour and was coming to the church, and they said, hey, do a little research and see what all's going on here. And I did it, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I can do all that.
Yeah.
That's me starting this and doing that. And so before I'd ever seen it, I'd read about it and studied it because an accountant, finance guy, we tend to overstudy everything. And so I'm like, I want to do this. Now I went to Rick and I said, Rick, I want to do this. And Rick looked at me, all the excitement in the world, and says, great, go for it. But we don't have any money and you can't have any time off. You got to keep doing what you're doing. And to a guy like me, that's like, okay.
Yeah.
I'm stupid enough to realize that, I mean, we'll just make it work.
Yeah.
And it was so crazy because when he said we don't have any money, he went out within a week and announced at the church, we're starting a Dream Center.
Oh my gosh.
And it's like, oh my
How
goodness, Rick, you told me there's no money and all this. And I never will forget the first check came in that weekend because I was in the finance department. So I saw this check that said for the Dream Center. And it was $1,500.
Like,
and it was crazy
something.
because it was Michelle Bazette's mom.
Oh, wow. That's
that
awesome.
had given that first seed to start this thing that Rick had just told me we don't have any money for. And it's so cool to see how she didn't have a clue about any of that, but she laid that seed. And so it really was the seed of Rick and Michelle pouring into that ministry early on without even intending to. So
that's so neat. I love, okay, so we all know, because the Dream Center's been around for a decade. So you of course leave the finance office. But how did you feel that first day where you came into the office and it was the Dream Center? What was that like?
Yeah, because I'd worked both for so long.
Okay.
So it's like my days off and my after hours I was doing Dream Center, and then during hours I was working in the finance department. So that first day we kind of made that switch. It was like, what am I going to do with all this free time?
You put your suits away and
put my suits away, put on a t-shirt. I wore that red t-shirt or a red t-shirt for years and years. And I was the pastor that was always in a t-shirt and shorts and all of this. And we knew this premise of whoever spends the most time with a person is going to win the battle of influence. And by that time, Kristen had kind of joined me as a volunteer, and we just looked at it and we're like, what can we do more? We were out here on Saturdays, we're checking in on these kids. There was nothing for them in the after school.
Right.
So me and my big dreams, I'm dreaming of the big VA hospital in downtown Little Rock, and I've got the cart ahead of the horse. And I think a lot of times we look at other ministries like what was going on in LA, and we see, oh my goodness, look where they are because of this building. And I got that same mindset. We've got to have this building to do this. And we looked at it, and Rick went with me to talk to them. And eventually the deal completely collapsed from, we were on like, this deal's going through to it's gone.
How did that make you feel? Because that one moment you get a check and you feel like God's confirmation, and then you set out for something and then it dies. How did that make you feel?
Well, one of the things I've learned in life is you live on your testimony. And you live on where God's come through in the past. And there's a verse that talks about you got to have the power or the prayer life for a pair of socks before you can dream for a new vehicle. And so you've got to be faithful in the small things. And so all my life I've seen God come through on one thing after another, miracle after miracle after miracle. And I got to that point and that deal fell through, and I'm like, God, you've done this. You've done this. Why can't this happen to me? What is it? And I mean, you can't help but kind of get in a little funk. It's like, okay, what did I do wrong?
Absolutely.
Where did I fail? What did I do wrong or whatever? And I just started to realize what a massive undertaking that would have been. And now I look back at it a decade in the tail view mirror, and I'm like, that's the best thing that could have ever happened, because we would have spent the last decade building a building and not building people.
Right.
And that's one of the things when it comes to ministry that we've got to be very, very careful of, is we're building people, not buildings.
Yeah.
We're building people, not assets and not money and all that. And that's really, it was humbling at the moment, but it was necessary for the future of the ministry.
Talking about people, who is maybe a kid or a volunteer or someone that came through the doors that you're like, this is why I do it?
Yeah, and I mean, I always go back to this story of this young little girl. She was 10 or 11 at the time, and we were so young and so stupid in starting the ministry. We didn't really have a clue what was going on. And this little girl, cute little girl, had 3 older brothers in high school, and something crazy was going on in her life. And Maya, she just was just such a blessing to us, and she just wanted to be around us and wanted to love on us and all of this. And so we just said, okay, this craziness is going on at home. We're going to protect her, because these brothers and their friends are doing something to her. And so we just jumped to our assumptions. We know what's going on. We never asked. So we've got her with us. If we're downtown, she's on our hip. And then one day there was a knock on the little building that we were in, and it was DHS. They said, she needs to come home. And so I'm like, okay. And so I walked her home, and I watched as DHS took the 3 boys and the daughter, and it was just whatever they could carry in their arms. There was no bag or trash bag that you hear the stories of. It was just whatever they could hold, and got them into a car, and they drove off. And then Mom was put in handcuffs and put in a police car, and I was just like, I couldn't speak. I was just speechless. And I started to just realize something's gone on here. And I started talking to the caseworker. I'm like, can we see her? Can we be in her life? And he's like, no. She'll change schools. She'll be with a family. You can't have any contact unless she pursues you and all this. And I'm like, but where did we fail her?
Yeah.
And it took a while because it was such an intense situation. And I said, we were protecting her, the brothers, and da-da-da-da-da. And he said, you were protecting her from the wrong thing. It was the mom that was molesting her, and the chaos at home was the brothers defending her. And it really drove home how important a relationship is, because I had failed to ask her what was wrong.
Wow.
I assumed I knew because I'm educated and I'm here to save the world and do all this, but we don't save anyone.
Yeah.
And we don't save anyone, especially if we don't take the time to get to know them and ask them those questions.
Yeah.
And that was the one thing I'd been praying for a long time. God, break my heart for what breaks yours.
Yeah.
I got in the car after that, and I lost it.
Oh, I'm sure.
I was a train wreck. I had to drive to Conway for a birthday party. I had to pull over 2 or 3 times because I could not stop crying.
And you're not a crier.
No, I'm not a crier.
Yeah, I know.
I'm emotionally detached.
I've never seen you cry.
But it just devastated me because the weight of all of this was on me because I didn't know her.
Right.
I thought I did. I thought I knew the problem, but I didn't know her. And there's a difference between thinking you know and really knowing.
Oh, absolutely.
And it is really asking the questions.
Right. I know over a decade, I'm sure you have so many stories like this. How being a leader in an organization, bringing people along for the ride. I mean, I work alongside you. We see great needs every day. How do you not get burned out and seeing it and knowing we may not be able to ever fulfill it all?
I mean, it's the starfish story about the little boy walking on the beach, and there's starfish that have all come up on the beach, and he's out there just chunking them in the ocean. And this older man that's wiser and knows this stuff comes by and says, hey, little kid, you can't save them.
Yeah.
There's so many of them. It's too big of a job for you. And he picks up one starfish and throws it in the ocean. He says, but I saved that one. And I think we've got to realize we were not called to be Jesus and save the world.
That's good.
We were called to be the hands and feet of Jesus. We were called to do the work that's in front of us and nothing more, nothing less, because we can't save the world.
Right.
But that one kid, we can be a part of their life. That one story I just shared is hundreds of them. And every day we experience those stories and they break your heart.
Right.
And then you experience these stories that are just craziness. I mean, I've preached at funerals where there was a homeless couple. We've spoken at a funeral where your husband and I both got called up to sit in the bishop's chairs up on stage at a church we had nothing to do with because we loved on this kid. And so many of these wild things that happen are because we get to know a person and really get to asking those questions. And that's what keeps me going because whether it's there, I tell the story all the time of Raphael, who we lost at a very young age. I'm fighting for the next Raphael. I don't know when this kid's meter is up, when their life is going to end. But right now, in this moment, I've got an opportunity to pour into them. And it's whoever spends the most time with a person wins the battle of influence. Let's focus in on that, live in this moment, and then we'll just have to see where it goes because we can't save them.
Right.
Jesus saves. We introduce them to Jesus.
Right.
That's it.
Right. I know a lot of people are like passionate about something, and I love how detailed your story is that you have to go after that one. What is the best advice? Because you have, I feel like over the decade, you've become very clear, especially with the Dream Center, who you're targeting, who you're going after. How did you figure that out? Or someone sitting out there who's about to start a nonprofit, or they're just starting a ministry, how can they do it what advice have you picked up over the time to make it very directed?
I grew up with a father that always told me that it's not about scoring the most points, it's about defense. It's about losing the least amount of ground. And so much of the time I look at people that are out there and the number one reason they fail is because they said yes too much. Satan brings just as many opportunities as God does, if not more. And not every opportunity is God. And so just because a door's open doesn't mean it's God that opened the door. Satan wants to trip us all up, and he'll open the doors wide so we can run in them and then drop off the deep end later on. And I think it goes back to the concept of Nehemiah. Nehemiah was called to rebuild the wall, and it was a 30-day process. It wasn't a whole lot, but he got all his pieces together and he went there and he says, I'm not coming down till this is done. And in ministry, it's not about all the opportunities that come along. It's about being faithful to the one opportunity that God called you for, and saying, okay, I'm going to see this through. And okay, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to have to say no to you, and I'm going to say no to you. And I can't do it all, but I can do this.
That's good.
And so no is probably the number one. People's inability to say no is probably the number one reason why people fail in life.
Wow, that's such good advice. You know, being in this now decade, going into the next decade now, this past year, what are you dreaming for? What is there more? Because we've grown. We're now every Arkansan. I would love for you to explain some of that and like what you're dreaming for this next decade.
When we started the Dream Center, we were part of a church. And when Jesus came and laid the groundwork for his bride, the church, there wasn't a mention of parachurch. And what we've done unintentionally is created parachurch. We've created a ministry that makes it easy for churches to say, hey, we're going to partner with you and you're going to do this, and we're going to send people and we're going to send finances, and you just keep doing that. But at the end of the day, it's not a circle. It's not really helping those people get involved in a life-giving church to the point to where they've got something that goes beyond us. They've got relationships. They've got that span the generations. So mom's got a life group, and the kids have got a little group, and the new baby's got a group. Well, now mom needs a new group. There's not this all-encompassing, because we as parachurch, we kind of get into our little ball.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we focus. And so what's exciting to me is we're starting this thing called City Serve, which now takes this decade of what we've built.
Right.
And our goal is to put it back in the hands of the local church and not come in there, oh, I've been doing this for a decade, I know better, and teaching you, but saying, look, what are you doing and what can we do to resource you?
Right.
And I mean, we're going to be able to provide $6 million this year in physical resources.
Right.
So that church of 25 people down there that's got a problem with kids sleeping on the floor can get beds.
Right.
Or this organization that's got this church, they've got this great ministry to mops. I mean, moms and all of this. And we can provide diapers.
Right.
And we can provide snacks. And we can provide the resources they need. But also, that's just a part of it.
Yeah.
They need encouragement. They need that coaching. Say, man, you're doing a great job. You just keep doing this. You be faithful to this one thing that you're doing. God's gonna bring great things.
Yeah.
And then also coming to them, because most of these pastors in these churches, it's less than 100 people.
Yeah.
And they're alone. They're bivocational, so they've got a job on the side, and they're doing the church. They feel like, I don't have what it takes. We can be the cheerleader and the encourager in that. And now we can take what we do with our kids programs and we can say, hey, you've always wanted a kids program? Well, we've got this relationship. We can make sure that there's food here every day. We've got this. We can provide you the curriculum. Hey, we can bring in the people that can help staff this. What is it that you're passionate about for your church and your community? And restore the balance back to the local church.
Yeah.
Because I really believe that when we take the power away from the local church, we're also stripping away a little bit of Jesus.
Right.
We're saying, okay, the church isn't all that God wanted.
Yeah.
And that's on us. That's not on the church. And so that's what I'm most excited about is how in the world we can restore that balance to where the local church becomes the hero of their neighborhood.
Right.
And when we help them start to realize their value in their neighborhood, they're going to become passionate about what's going on around the world. I mean, whether it's the Syrian refugee crisis or the refugees at our border, or it's something that's going on in some other country, whether it's a war or a famine or whatever, they're going to say, those are my neighbors, because I've met someone just like that lives down the street or that goes to school with my kid or whatever. It's that neighborhood to the nations mentality that when we start to fall in love with what Jesus has for us here, we're going to get that bigger picture. Okay, Jesus has those same kind of kids or that same mama all over this world, and it's going to revolutionize the world, but in the name of the church that Jesus intended to be the center.
Right. I love that outreach has to be an arm of the church, like, and not separated from the church. I know every day when I get to meet someone who comes through our doors and get to hear their story and build that relationship, that's what keeps me humble and knowing that I need Jesus. When it comes outside of my perspective or me just getting filled up, and it's more about I need to get filled up because there's a world out there that truly needs us, and I need to be more like him, so I'm not imitating some falseness to them or false hope or whatever. So I love that you want to give that mandate back to the church and empower them. I think so many people in your position would say, well, look what I built, and let's just keep all the resources here, and we could just grow us and reach more people. I love your humility in that you're like, how can I partner with more people to reach every Arkansan? And that's our mission. Every Arkansan chasing their God-given dream. And I'm thankful that you do it and you empower all of us to do it. And so, but it's moved to every Arkansan, and there's Dream Center Restored and City Serve. And so how do you feel now looking at everything and going, whoa, this kind of, I blinked and it's grown tremendously?
We, over the years, have refined our mission to every Arkansan chasing their God-given dream. And that really hit me the hardest, because it's like I'm chasing my dream and people like you are just along for the ride. How do we restore that to you? And I've made you work for it, but you've started chasing your dream and building Restored, a ministry just for hurting women and for also not just hurting women, helping women just leap forward in bounds in discipleship and truth. And City Serve and LDA and Dream Center with your husband, helping him realize, I mean, he's young, but he's got this tremendous ability to lead. How in the world do I help him chase his dream to be that leader?
You didn't say I was young.
Well, you're short.
Oh, okay.
Not young. Difference.
You compliment the woman in that.
You're 5 foot, right?
5'2", Drew.
5'2".
Sorry.
But with this, it's one of those things that if I can help you guys chase your dream, how much more powerful is this ministry going to be down the road?
Right.
Yeah, down the road, someone's going to say, oh, Drew built this. No, Drew invested in a couple of people.
Yeah.
That invested in a couple of people. And all of a sudden, they're going to start to turn on the light bulb. They're going to say, isn't that what Jesus did?
Yeah. He empowered people.
Jesus didn't go out and build this giant ministry. Jesus went out and really invested in 12 people.
Yeah.
And some of those people, they fell off. And they didn't produce any fruit or whatever. But there were a few that went out and really produced a lot of fruit.
Yeah.
And that's what our job is. That's what our job here is we want to bring in people, and they've got a dream, and how do we encourage them, equip, and coach them to chase that dream?
Yeah.
And that's this whole podcast was the heart behind that was I have met so many people in this state that have inspired me to keep going.
Yeah.
They've encouraged me when I wanted to quit, because that happens at least a couple of times a week.
We can only quit on Tuesday.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, the crisis doesn't happen on a Tuesday,
Right.
so we never get to do it.
but with that, that's my job.
Yeah.
And it's not about me. It's I'm Yoda, and I'm looking for the Luke Skywalkers.
Yeah.
I want to see those Jedi Knights that want to go out and conquer the world. And we've all got to get to that place to where we realize it's not about us.
Right.
It's about those 2 or 3 or 12 people that we're working with. How do we get them to be all that God wants them to be?
Yeah.
And realizing they're going to pick up people and doing that.
Right.
And all the way back, there's a guy that inspired me when I was younger. Dawson Trotman started the Navigators, and Steve Shadrach with Student Mobilization. These guys poured that into me over the years. And then I've got a father that, I mean, had he not invested the way he did in my life, I wouldn't have half the ability and understanding that I do.
Right.
It was people like my father that invested in me, that helped me to get to this point. And now the only thing that's left is for me to pay that forward with whoever it is that comes around. And that's the thing. I think so many people, they have a dream, they've got a vision, but they've not gotten in relationship.
Yeah.
They've not let people really know the real them. They've kind of hidden it. They've got scars or whatever it is that's holding them back. And they get out there and it gets hard.
Yeah.
And they quit because they're doing it alone.
Right.
When we get an army, when we get people that we're all chasing this, you're going to have good days when I'm having bad days.
Yeah.
And you can come in, slap me across the face and say, Drew, get
I
it
won't do
together.
that.
Remember yesterday.
Yeah.
We can do this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's why it's so important not to do it alone.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important also not to get so caught up in my vision for something that you don't allow those people around you to have their own vision.
Yeah.
That you don't allow them to chase after something that has the potential to be the greatest thing that ever happened, but it just wasn't your idea.
Right, right.
So.
Well, I'm thankful I got to put you in the hot seat because I know there's so much wisdom that was shared today, and just people really get to know the heart behind what they always see. They see our posts and the kids, and they see City Serve Now and Restored and LDA and all the things, but to get to meet the man who didn't let fear hold him back, who said, I won't just be like in this office, but I'm going to go put some of my things that I was taught and invested in. And I just want to say thank you because you've empowered and invested in me and my husband. And it truly is a trickle effect. If you see someone and invest in them, I see now so often me and Marius turning around and going, how can we empower the next person? Because it's great to have someone believe in you, and then you start seeing God's hand move, and you want that for someone else. And so I just hope people were encouraged by this to like jump in the race, start running it, and chasing after their God-given dream, because it will change generations to come.
Absolutely.
Thank you for watching the Every Arkansan podcast today. We hope you feel inspired to go after and chase your God-given dream.